Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Find Me in a Book podcast. I'm your host, Tav. This is episode 9 and the last one for the year. Next year will be 2022, which is kind of crazy to think about, but also really exciting. I wanted to do something a little bit different. I wanted to go over the books that I've read this year, and I know that there was a lot more than what I'm going to talk about. I am strictly going to focus on the ones that were my favorite and the ones that stood out the most as I was going through the books in my library. And side note, I also decided to start investing in actual books, like the physical books. I have a couple from different series that I like, but I decided I finally wanted to start a physical library of the books that I am obsessed with. So I just ordered like 10, and there are like a couple different series, and I'm really excited for them to start showing up so that I can have those instead of just everything on my Kindle app. So, without further ado, let's get started into the list of books that I highly recommend you start 2022 off with. And I'm also going to be making an Instagram post about these as well, what I think you should read over this holiday break. We still have all this week left before I think people have to go back to school and work next week. So you can at least get like one of these read. And yes, these are just my top favorites that I need you to start reading like immediately. So the first one is I literally just finished it like an hour ago. I've had this one in my library for a long time and I've heard great things about it on like Book Talk, on like TikTok, but I have just been saving it. I don't know why. I heard great reviews about it and I heard great things and I just kind of wanted to like savor it and just wait until a time where I was like, okay, I can really sit down and focus on this because all this week I don't have work. So I can just sit down and read and relax. And so it was a perfect start to this whole week that I have off and this holiday vacation. So again, it's called A Touch of Darkness and it is by Scarlett Sinclair. So, A Touch of Darkness is another story about like Persephone and Hades, and it's based in like the modern day world and over in Greece, and everyone loves the gods, everything like that. And so it's just another story of them and a retelling of how they met and everything, and I loved it. I was obsessed with it. And what a funny thing is that I read another one of her books last week and I didn't even know that she was the one that wrote like The Touch of Darkness that I had been waiting for. So I love her writing, I love her stories, I love the worlds that she creates. And so last week I read a book by her. It's called A King of Battle and Blood, and that one was very, very good as well. And it is a part of the series, but I believe this series just barely came out, so there's only one book. So now I probably have to wait a long time to read the second. I think there's going to be a third one as well. So if you don't like waiting for books, I don't know if I would recommend starting that one yet. But A Touch of Darkness does have two other books that are already available. I don't think I'm going to read those ones just because it didn't leave me on like a cliffhanger. And for some reason, I don't enjoy reading like more books or after the first one unless it kind of leaves me on a cliffhanger and I really enjoy the world or the storyline. And I did love A Touch of Darkness, and it continues with the couple as well, and I felt like they kind of solved all their differences at the end. So I don't know. I think I would be bored. Is that controversial to say? I think I would be bored in the second and third book. But with King of Battle and Blood by her, I'm really excited for the next books because it does leave me on a cliffhanger and I do enjoy the characters and they still have so much mystery and thriller to get through that I'm really excited about that book. If that makes sense, that's kind of how my mind works. So I read those two books. I highly recommend. The next one, I believe it just came out because I've just been seeing it on like book TikTok and in Goodreads and different things like that. And it's called The Love Hypothesis. And it's by Ali Hazelwood. I highly recommend it, which was very strange But in my head, as I was reading this book, I pictured Adam Driver, and I don't know about you, but he is strangely attractive. I mean, I don't know how to explain it other than that, just strangely attractive. And then I watched a book TikTok say that they talked to the author and she based that character off of Adam Driver. And I was like, whoa, that's kind of weird. Like that I was automatically thinking him, and it actually is based off of him and like the characteristics of this main character. And it was so weird, but I was like, I felt so justified that I had him in my head, if that's the right word. But it was just very, very good. And I really liked it. So if you want a quick read, cute love story, it's a standalone book. So it's not based off of a series. And you can read it very quickly and it hooks you like page one. It's very good. I highly recommend that one. The next one I read this year that I enjoyed was It Ends With Us. And as you remember, I believe from last episode or the episode before, I talked about how I already did a podcast on this, but I just didn't feel like I did it justice. So it's still in like my archives to one day release. But that's another book that I highly recommend, and it's a very sensitive book. And so if you are looking for an emotional book to read, then I highly recommend that one. But it also has a very good storyline, and it's a very good book. Everything by Colleen Hoover that I have read is very, very good. And the world that she creates and the storylines, there's just a lot of interesting things that she puts in there that just keeps your attention the whole time. The next one that I read this year was the fourth book of The Four Horsemen by Laura Thalassa, I think you say it. Very, very good. Those books have been coming out. I think it's actually been a couple years since the third one came out. If not like the beginning of last year. It took a long time for this fourth one to come out. But I do recommend this series. They are kind of heavy, like it's about like the apocalypse, obviously, about like the four horsemen. And so there's kind of like hard topics, almost like, well, hard topics isn't the way to put it, I guess, but it's just kind of there's crude moments in it, and you just realize that that's probably how people would react if we were in an apocalypse. I can't say that word. But it's very good. I do like the characters. I do like it stretches your mind, and so it makes you think about like what would happen, and each of the four horsemen like fall in love with someone, and it's a great story, and the fourth one wraps it all up, and I really recommend it. It's really great. It's just a different type of book than what we usually read with like the fluff and like the beautiful moments and everything. It's kind of just like a harsh love story. I don't know how else to explain it, but it's very good. And I'm kind of sad that that series is already over, because I did enjoy that world and I did enjoy the different characters. And that's the thing with each book, is a different horseman and a different like main character. And so you kind of get even more about different parts of the world, because each woman is from a different part of the world, and you see how like different parts of the world reacted with the apocalypse and everything like that. It's very interesting. The next one is the third book from Blood and Ash, and I'm telling you, can we talk about this? If you have not read these books yet, what are you doing? What are you doing? Along with, so From Blood and Ash, and also A Court of Thorn and Roses. If you have not read those series yet, I feel like I can't even talk to you. Like, these two series, I'm telling you, if you have not read them, I'm going to emphasize this so much. If you have not read them, please stop listening to this podcast and go read them or listen to them right now. I am not exaggerating. These are the best series I have ever read, and I've been reading a long time. I've been reading these genres for a long time, and these are seriously the best books. I am obsessed. And the third book of the Blood and Ash series from Jennifer Armentrout came out this year. And I believe the fourth one, I want to say it comes out in like March, but it's a while and it makes me so sad. I don't know. There's quite a few books that are coming out next year that I can't wait for. And I think that one's March or it could be January. I'm really hoping January, but I don't think it is. It is so good. Like all three books leave you on a cliffhanger. There's just so much information. I love the world building. I love the characters. I love the intrigue. I love every single thing about it. I'm obsessed with. And I think you would like it too if you like fantasy and like the different, completely different world than like Earth. Very, very, very good. So the third one came out, but I've been reading those series like over and over constantly because they're so good. And she also came out with a book that is in the same universe, but it's like thousands of years before Blood and Ash. And so you kind of see the history of like the gods that they talk about in Blood and Ash. And this book is called Shadow in the Embers. And that one is so good as well. And that's going to be part of a series that I don't think the second book comes out until next year. But I'm telling you, she is such a good writer. I love almost every single book from Jennifer Armentrout. Literally obsessed with her writing because of the different worlds that she creates. Like she has an alien series, and I believe the first one's called Obsidian, and that's one of the very first books that I read from Jennifer Armentrout, and it was years and years and years ago. And me and my sister are so obsessed with that series because it goes like Obsidian, Onyx, and I can't remember the other one, but it's so good. Just all her alien series are amazing. You'll become obsessed with them. But yeah, we reread those series all the time because they are so good. And I didn't even go over it at the beginning. I just kind of like went right into the books. But all of these books, I would love for my sister and my mom to read them. And most of these, my sister has read them because I talk about them so often. And she's very much like wants to read the books that I love. And same with her, like when she's like, this series is so good, I know that it's so good. Like we have learned each other's styles of books so well that even when we're midway through a book, we're like, oh my gosh, you have to start reading this. It's so good. And that's what I really enjoy about having a sister that reads the same books as me. And even like I have a couple of friends that I text that I'm like, oh my gosh, start reading this right now. That's what I did for one of my friends yesterday. I texted her and I was like, you have to start reading A Touch of Darkness. It is so good. And she's like, on it. I'm starting tomorrow. And I did that with like The Love Hypothesis as well. I just enjoy having people that I can text like that. And then I want to be that person for you guys. Like, tell me in the comments, like, books to read, and I'll send as many suggestions as I can too. That's why I wanted to make this list. And any book that I start finding, I want to start getting on my Instagram more with the stories and say like, hey, I'm reading this book. It's so good. And start updating you that way as well. Because yeah, like I want this to be a community that we can do that. That immediately we're like, oh my gosh, start reading this. Like you have to start reading this. And yeah, that's what I want to be. So anyways, let's continue. I kind of mentioned it before, but Court of Thorn and Roses. I'm sure if you are on Book Talk at all, or even just in Barnes and Noble or anything associated with books, you are aware of Court of Thorn and Roses. And I'm not exaggerating. It is not a phase. It's not just like hyped. It's not just like, oh yeah, people are obsessed. No, it is so good. And when I tell you, this doesn't happen very often, but the second book was so much better than the first book. Isn't that insane? That like never happens. Usually the first book is really good. The second book is like, oh yeah, okay. But I'm telling you, the first book was amazing. The second book blows your mind. The third book is amazing as well. Like it blows your mind because it is so good. There's so many like twists and turns and the storylines are so great. And I'm not just saying that. Like if I could recommend anything out of this list to start tomorrow or even today, it would be A Court of Thorn and Roses. And then I would want you to read From Blood and Ash. That's how much I love these series. And that's how much I'm telling you that A Court of Thorn and Roses, that series will change your life. It will get you into the universe